Hi guys, ya sabes que Carlos irte to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're making spinach and feta filled bread rolls. These are going to be pull apart rolls. They're going to be soft on the inside. They're going to be filled with spinach, feta, herbs, basically like a Spanakopita type filling. You're going to love them. These are great for a holiday table if you want to make a different sort of roll that everyone is going to fall in love with. Let's get started. So we're going to start using the mixer. If you don't have a mixer, you can definitely do this by hand in a big bowl. You're just gonna have to knead it for almost twice the time. So if you have a mixer, take it out. 1.5 cups of water. Make sure that it's lukewarm water. 2 teaspoons of sugar. 1.5 teaspoons of instant dry yeast or active yeast. And then over here, I have 4 cups of all-purpose flour. It's about 630 grams or so, with a heaping teaspoon of salt. I'm gonna whisk this all together. And I know that my yeast is good because I've been testing the recipe these past few days. Plus I made a batch of the dough that's right behind me, so that way this video can go faster. But if you have yeast sitting in the refrigerator and you're not sure if it's good or not, make sure don't skip this step of proofing. Keep it in this mixture right here for about 8 minutes. And when a puffy cloud forms on the top of the water or on top of the water, then you know that your yeast is good and it's active. Yeast rarely goes bad, but when it does, it doesn't work. It doesn't do its thing. It doesn't help the dough rise and you won't have a bread. So just try not to skip this step unless you use your yeast often and you know that it's good. So I'm gonna add all of the flour and salt mixture in here, with the final ingredient, which is a 1/4 cup of olive oil. That's about a 1/4 cup. Get the dough hook attachment on, and I'm gonna knead this for 10 minutes. I know a lot of people are gonna ask if they can use bread flour. Bread flour is even better. If you have it, use the same amount of bread flour instead of the all-purpose, but all-purpose flour works, so use whichever one you like. And if I didn't say it already, we're gonna knead this for 10 minutes on low speed. Okay, so once you're done, once the machine is done, or if you're done kneading it, the dough is still going to be soft, but it's going to be tacky and not sticky. If it's not at this stage and it's still very wet and sticky, you can add a little bit more flour, maybe a 1/4 cup or so, and knead it until it gets to that consistency. Put a little bit of oil in a bowl, and then just put the dough in there and toss it around to coat it. And you can cover this with plastic wrap or with a lid, whatever, and put it in the warmest part of your house until it rises and it's doubled in volume. So while the dough is rising, I'm gonna go ahead and make the filling. So I have, on the recipe, it says 1 small onion. You can even leave the onion out because we're adding scallions to this. You could put a few shallots in there. If you have a couple of leeks, you could put leeks, or leave it out altogether. I have this, what's remaining of a big onion over here is probably equivalent to maybe 1/4 of an onion or 1/3 of an onion. I'm just gonna finely chop it. I like the sweetness that it adds, but also keep in mind that it is gonna add some extra texture. The onions are not gonna completely melt. So it's up to you if you wanna leave it in or, omit it. Now this is the same filling that I use for my Spanakopita filled grilled cheese sandwiches, and this does make a bigger batch than is needed for this recipe for these rolls. You're only gonna use about 1/3 of it, maybe half, not even half, so you're gonna have some left over, but this is great to have as leftovers because you can make the grilled cheese sandwiches. So the onions are in the pan and they're heating over medium-high heat. I'm gonna add about 2-3 tablespoons of olive oil and a little pinch of salt. And I'm gonna cook them until they're soft, about 8 minutes or so. All right, the onions are ready. Now I'm gonna add the scallions. I've just finely chopped 5 or 6 scallions all the way down to the white parts. Soak them in water to get all the dirt out, and then I just strain them. And I have 2 garlic cloves that I've grated. I'm just gonna mix everything all up and cook it for about 2 minutes or so, just so that the scallions can soften up a bit. So now I have a pound of spinach, but I'm gonna add it in a few batches. Each time the first batch wilts, then I'm gonna add the next one. And I'm also gonna season each batch with just a little pinch of salt and a little bit of pepper. You don't have to do pepper for each batch, otherwise it might come out a little bit too hot, too spicy. And do this over medium-high heat, so that way the liquid that the spinach releases evaporates, and that way you don't have a watery filling. Okay, so the spinach is cooked, and as you can see, there's hardly any liquid left, but it still is pretty moist and juicy, so you don't want it to be totally dry. And now I'm gonna add a teaspoon of dry dill. If you have fresh dill, you can add a little bit more than that, maybe a tablespoon or so. And over here I have 300 grams of feta in chunk form that I'm just gonna crumble into the mixture. 300 grams is about 11 ounces. That is a lot of feta, but the title of this recipe is spinach and feta filled bread rolls, so I do like to be generous with the feta. If you like less, go ahead and add less. If there's another cheese that you like more than feta cheese, be my guest, use that one instead. And I have 6 ounces of shredded mozzarella cheese. This is gonna make it stringy and cheesy and just so good. You can use Gouda cheese, Kefalograviera, Gruyere is nice too. Whatever cheese melts well and has nice pull to it, you can use that. Mozzarella is a pretty mild cheese, so if you want something with a little more flavor, go ahead and substitute it. And then at this point, go in and taste it and see if it needs any more salt or pepper. My goodness, this is so good. You can stuff this in mushrooms. You can use this filling, like I said, to make grilled cheese sandwiches, grilled cheese croissants. So many options. These leftovers will not go to waste. Okay, I'm gonna set this aside now so it can cool a little bit while we form our rolls. So the dough has risen and it's nice and fluffy, and the more the dough rises, the fluffier the bread is going to be. Always keep that in mind. So make sure to let it rise well. Do not skip this step. And we're gonna cut this into 16 equal portions. I like to cut it into 4 portions first. And then cut each one in half. And then one more time, cut each half in half again, and you'll end up with 16 pieces of dough. And then we're just gonna roll each one up. You could even roll it like this into little flat discs, because they are gonna get filled after all. So spread these out with your fingertips. The dough is so soft and pliable that it spreads easily, and you can just press it like this. You don't even need a rolling pin. Just try to keep them shaped like a circle, but just get them as flat as possible. The flatter you get them, the more filling you're gonna be able to stuff into them. And it is a good idea to shape them first and flatten them out first, so that way you're done with this step, and then the next step is putting the filling, so you're not going back and forth with shaping and putting filling. Things move so much faster that way. All right, so now we're gonna take a tablespoon of the filling and put it in the center of each one of the little rounds. If you have smaller ones, you could put a little bit less filling. Some of them are gonna be a little bit bigger than others. So this is what's left. It's about half or so. I'm just gonna store this in my refrigerator in an airtight container, and it'll stay fresh for 5-6 days. It probably won't last that long. Then you're gonna take each one of the little balls of dough or pieces of dough, and you're gonna gather up all of the edges and kind of pinch them together towards the center to cover that filling. And then if you need to, let me move this aside, you can roll it a little bit using the palm of your hand. That helps the bottom seal, and it gets it back into a nice ball shape like this. Once you form the rolls, then go ahead and transfer them either into a cast iron skillet, which I love to use because it retains heat beautifully in the oven. It looks really nice. You can literally take it out of the oven and bring it to the table. It just makes it for great presentation. Or you can put it in a 9 by 13 inch pan, whatever you have. These around. You can squeeze them in together. They will fit. They're going to puff up and then they're going to pull apart. If you want to make these individually, then just put them in a baking tray and leave some room in between them if you don't want to have that pull apart effect. But I just think that this looks so nice. And then I have some melted butter here and I'm just going to brush them with the butter. Once they come out of the oven, they're going to get another hit of a seasoned butter that I'm going to make a flavored butter. I'm going to add a little bit of garlic powder to this, a little bit of salt, some oregano, and when they come out of the oven, they're going to be brushed with that delicious butter and just add so much flavor to the top of them. At this point, just cover them with plastic wrap loosely and let them puff up a little bit. So let them sit for about 30 or 40 minutes in the warmest spot of your house. And at this point, it's a good idea to preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. I like to just put the pan on top of my oven. As my oven is heating, that area stays warm. Once the oven heats up, these should almost be ready. Once they're nice and puffy, they're not going to double in size again. You don't want that. Then you're going to put them in on the center rack and let them bake for about 30 minutes, 35 minutes, or until they're beautifully golden all around. As soon as they come out, you're going to go ahead and brush that butter on top of them. Let them sit at room temperature for about 15-20 minutes before you serve them, because all of that steam in there needs to settle down and distribute. And if you were to go into them right away and try to bite into them or serve them, they're gonna appear to be a little bit doughy. So don't do that. I'll show you what they look like as soon as they're done. Okay, the rolls are finally ready, and the hardest part about this recipe is waiting for them to cool down so that way you can take a bite of them. The house smells incredible. Now, as soon as they come out of the oven, like I said, make sure that you brush them with that flavored butter, the flavored melted butter. There's some garlic in there, some oregano, and a little bit of salt. It's just going to add so much flavor on top. And if you're not into garlic and all that, just leave it out. Just butter them, brush them with butter once they come out. I did raise the temperature to 475 degrees, and I let them cook for 5 more minutes because they didn't get enough color on them. Ovens vary, so just keep an eye on them. Once they're beautifully golden, take them out. Mine cooked for 35 minutes, but yours might take 30 minutes, so keep an eye on them. It is time to take a bite and just look at how soft they are. Look inside, look at that filling. Pillowy soft on the inside. The spinach is so flavorful. It's so nice and juicy. The spinach and the herbs and the cheeses are so cheesy. The feta adds just the right amount of cheesiness to this. I think you guys are going to love this one. Make these for Thanksgiving. It's right around the corner. The exact measurements are on the website, www.dimitrasdishes.com. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, and I'll see you here next time. Yes, us.